We as a culture are obsessed with, some might even say addicted to, summarizing. Now, it's been a trend for a while, but AI recently has just accelerated that. Now we see the word summary everywhere. And summarization is not a bad thing. There's obviously a reason it is a trend. I think it's a reaction to those people who just talk too long when they could have just given a short version. It's a reaction to the 1,400 page bills that no one's ever going to read that get passed in the Senate. It's a reaction to the fact that you can't figure out what groomsmen need to wear to a wedding when you read through 300 different articles, and so you just want a good old summary. It's a reaction to so many different things. I think it's a reaction to education because we're taught that summarizing a paper, an essay, is the way that we learn. And so you just need the facts, you just need a certain bit of knowledge. And so summarizing is not a bad thing. But anything becomes a bad thing when it becomes an addiction. A lot of it comes down to we just have too much information to process. There's so many things that we need to intake. There's so much information that is everywhere. And so in order to intake all this information, we can't intake more than we can take in. So we have to take in bite-sized information. And so we chop these little bits of information into summaries so that we can process even more. So in order to process more, we technically are processing less. I really started thinking about this when Apple released their Apple Intelligence ads. It was all these different people in a hard situation, then all of a sudden, because of the summarization feature, because of AI, they were able to do something really quickly. I remember one specifically as a guy in a business meeting. He hasn't looked at the prospectus and he hits Apple Intelligence, gets a summary, and boom, he knows what is happening and he's a part of the meeting and saved the day. And it was showing that efficiency is a great thing and efficiency is a good thing. It's just not the only thing. Someone said this recently and it got me really thinking. They were saying writing is going to be a lost art. Basically, we're going to type in bullet points of what we need to say into ChatGPT, and then it's going to get sent in an email, expanded, and then the same person's going to look at that expanded thing and shrink it down to bullet points. And so all we're going to be doing is just communicating in bullet points, and writing as an art is going to be lost. That may be a bit dramatic, but it definitely got you thinking about summaries, and are they good? Are they bad? Have we taken them too far? And so in this video, I want to take a look at summaries and why I think as a culture, we're addicted to summarization, and we got to do something to swing the pendulum back a little bit the other direction. I don't think anyone wants to go back to people talking for way too long or reading way too long emails, but there's a point where you can summarize too much and where summaries actually become hurtful. My basic rule to start, and I felt through this a little bit, is that if it's something I'm really passionate about, I want to know the full thing. So for example, I'm a filmmaker. I enjoy making films and I enjoy reading about films. And so if I'm going to read a book on James Cameron, there's no reason to get a summary of the book because I want to actually experience the book. I want to hear about the time and the dramatic story of when he brought a rat back to life using CPR and saved it as his pet on the set of The Abyss. I want to hear about how he helped on a Roger Corman film and overtook the guy who was in charge of him and became awesome and blah, 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 the whole story. I want to hear about those stories. I just don't want a summary of, oh, James Cameron is a really good filmmaker. I don't want that summary. I want to know about it. But there are things I really don't care to know much about. Recently, I was trying to keep track of what was happening with the backrooms trend of there was a film that come out that was based on some subreddit of something, and I just wanted a summary. I did a little bit of deep dive into this subreddit trying to figure it out, and I ended up just summarizing it in Google AI, and it was super helpful. Thank God. Praise God for summaries. So there's things that I'm very passionate about and I want to know. And then there's things that I just would rather have a summary about. So I think it's okay to have kind of your own ground rule of how you want to partake in summarizing things. But as a society, when we assume that summarizing is just naturally better, we lose a lot of cool things. If you think about the internet overall, we think that we have access to all the information in the world on the internet. But really, we just have access to a summary of all the information on the internet. And at some point you summarize so much and then summaries are referencing other summaries, and at some point you lose something. You can simplify too much. At some point a clock no longer tells time when you simplify it down too much and you miss the details and the things going on. There's an incredible Jim Collins quote. He talks about that everyone is trying to stay on top of things, but at some point somebody's got to get to the bottom of things. And so we're just living, hyper living, skimming along the surface of life, as a futurist once said, and we're not actually getting to the depth of what's happening. We don't have a deep understanding. We just live in summaries and hyper living and skimming along things and barely understanding a lot. We may understand a lot, but we only deeply understand a few small things. And at some point, I think there's some things and some people who don't understand anything deep because they only live in summaries. So it can be a problem. I think about how not everything can be debated or should be debated in 280 characters. Twitter blew up because it was a way to say something really succinctly, and it's incredible for comedy, and there's incredible things that can be said succinctly. But at some point, you can simplify too much. I think it was John Adams who said, you can simplify a clock and it won't tell time. Like at some point, something has to be a certain level of complexity. And it's good to be able to summarize and know the basis of an understanding arc of it. But just because you can say something in 280 characters, just because it can be summarized, doesn't mean it should. I think about a book that I read recently. It was called Silence. And it's a book about Catholic missionaries in Japan and how they were trying, it was a fictional story written very realistically. And ultimately the guy ends up recanting his faith, and it's kind of a tragedy. But it gets you to understand why he did it. It builds you up through it. You understand a character's perspectives. You're literally walking in his shoes, and so you understand it. And even though I disagree with it, I understand it, and I can see why the author put it in that way, because I took a deep dive. I took a journey in someone's shoes. I got to see the experience and smell everything and taste what was happening and feel the environment because I read an entire book. You don't get that with a summary. Same with storytelling. You can say the Avengers saved the world in Avengers Endgame, or you can experience it and you can feel it and you can see how, and you can understand the cleverness and you can understand characters and the motivations and what's happening and the sacrifice that was involved. And it can be an incredible story. I think of the time when I got stung by a bunch of bees or a bunch of wasps. At one point I told that story to some people and all I said was, yeah, I was playing hide and go seek and I got stung by a bunch of wasps. That's not a story, that's a statement. And at some point you can summarize too much. At some point you can just hear the information but you're not feeling it. You're not understanding the transformation that could involve through telling a story. So summarization can actually be hurtful when it's summarized too much, or when you summarize things that shouldn't be summarized. Quick little side note, I actually kind of miss how it used to be. Literally the oldest book that I know of, there may be one dated a little bit older, but the book of Job, certainly one of the oldest books in the world, talks about these people and this character going through a bunch of things, and these guys, as they're discussing this problem, there's I think 4 main characters, and they're all talking in these giant monologues. Like, I mean, they go on for, 2 to 3 pages of explaining and talking and giving every little detail that they want to give, and then the next person responds. They don't interrupt each other. They're just talking in this really long, dramatic monologues. And I'm not saying that's exactly how it was or how it happened, but there is something that's lost when everything is just one-word summaries or quick thoughts or understandings, because you actually want to know how someone feels. In a story, it doesn't work in summarization form, and real life can't be completely summarized either. At some point, there's got to be a limit to how much you can summarize. And in art specifically, because of summaries, we want to just understand what's happening, and in a lot of ways, by summarizing something, you let someone else determine your enjoyment of it. I like to push back aggressively against this because I realize how much it affects me. There's a lot of movies I've not seen, and I'll let someone's summary of it affect what I think of it. I'll let a review and the reviews of the internet determine what I actually think of it without actually forming my own opinion. And then I think of a film like Minions, and I just aggressively push back. I don't care what the internet says. I love it, and I think it shows humans and people enjoy it when I talk about how much I love it. And I think about when people love other things. It's fun to hear what people love and what they're passionate about and what they dislike, because it shows what makes you human. And you can't summarize that into what everyone thinks. You can't summarize 2 competing opinions effectively without losing something in the process or understanding it fully. I think about how the sign to Disney World is not Disney World. The thumbnail of a YouTube video is not the YouTube video. Sometimes it's even against what the video is about. It's clickbait. But I really think about how if you're driving down the road and you stop at the sign to Disney World and you take pictures with it and you say, yeah, we went to Disney World. No, you didn't. You only saw the sign of Disney World. There's a difference between experiencing something and only seeing a part of it and understanding it and summarizing. Understanding is not experience, and experience will lead to a deeper understanding. And then this whole thing gets even more messed up when you bring in AI, because AI is trying to summarize something and it's going to make mistakes. Even when humans summarize something, you're going to leave out key important events and details. I think about when a kid comes up and says, he punched me. That's the summary. But if you dive into it and look into the details of it, you start seeing what actually happened and all the different parts and the context of what happened. And yeah, the fact was he did punch him, but it was because of a very good reason, and you lose a lot of stuff. So think about how a human messes up summary. How much does AI mess up summary? For example, I was looking up how certain people worked in this country because of regulations of visas, like how a religious organization worked here. And the summary explained how they did it. So I dove into the summary and I saw that it was quite the discrepancy. It was not talking about Protestant missionaries, it was talking about Mormon missionaries. And for me, there is a giant discrepancy. They do not believe the same things. Any other method may be the same of how religious organizations overall get inside this country. But it was radically different. And AI just assumed, oh, missionary, religion, somehow mixed it together and said this is how it happens. And it was wildly incorrect. And that happens all the time. And yet we don't know it's wildly incorrect until we dig into it. And the problem is 90% of it, that's just a random statistic I came up with, but about 90% of it is correct. And in order to understand and find that 1%, you'd have to verify everything. And so we just trust. We just trust that it's correct. And on the more important things, I know people dive in and research, but think about how many small things that we're just believing because it's taking the average sum of truth and turning it into what it thinks. Because we think the AI is taking all of the best ideas and putting them all together. And in some ways that's correct. But really, AI is taking every idea that exists and putting it together. And so you don't get the best idea. You're getting a weird mismatch in the middle, a weird average idea. Think about how dangerous it is that if you were to say best leaders or communication styles in the world, it's going to take the best leaders in the world. And it's not going to take just Ronald Reagan and whoever other great leaders you may think of. It's going to take Ronald Reagan and combine him with Hitler. And that's going to create some weird smorgasbord of truth that the AI is creating because it's taking the sum value of all the knowledge out there, whether it's the idiot kid on Reddit who's talking about putting glue in pizza, or whether it's some misunderstanding hallucination, and it's putting it together and it's creating something that we're saying, oh, it's AI, it's combining everything together, it must be the most true. So when you bring AI into a summary, it makes it even more dangerous. So what do we do with all this? You're looking at summaries. Obviously, the pendulum has swung way too far one way where we're just summarizing everything. But then there is a reason for summaries. And then now you add AI on top of it, and now it's making summaries even more complex and more challenging. And so I think it comes down to very simply that the people who take the time to focus and get to the bottom of things that they care about and are passionate about, those are the people that pretty much have a superpower. Because there's so many people now who their understanding of world events, their understanding of creativity, their understanding of their job, their understanding of just life in general is based on weird summaries. And that's not real life. The people who are out there living it, the people who are actually out there doing that job, the people who are actually out there in the weeds of creativity and the weeds of research and reading the entire book and not just the summary, those are the people who are doing something. Because it doesn't come down to how much knowledge you have. There's more knowledge out there than ever before and you have access to it. So it doesn't matter about who gets more knowledge. There's no way to get more knowledge than somebody else. It's about what you're doing with that knowledge. And if you apply one thing that you understand deeply, that's going to be a superpower. And so for those people who are digging in and not just living in the world of summaries and hyper-living, skimming across life, those are the people that are going to change the world. And so I think that's pretty cool. There's a way to fight back. You can't change the rest of the world, but you can change yourself. And in some way, that may end up changing the world. I think that's kind of cool.